Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about a non-AI topic, which is automating the folder and subfolder creation, where the list or the backend data source is SharePoint Online, and I will be leveraging Power Automate Flow to create these folders and subfolders. I know in the interest of the time, we have limited time today, but I will try to cover as much as possible and quickly as well. So I will talk about the scenario first. The scenario here is that you might have created folders and subfolders in an automated fashion in the past using Power Automate. But my scenario is something unique here, which I wanted to tell you that there are multiple lists. And based on this list criteria, different criterias of columns or the selection of the columns values, the subfolders, folders, and subfolder needs to be created. So basically, there are three lists which I want to talk about. One is the emission category or emission measurement. Once the user creates an item or a record in this particular list based on some three prime values or unique values, which is location, legislation, and measurement category, the measurement process steps gets created in another list. And how these process steps gets created, it is based on some configuration which is there at the backend. Now, when I say configuration is there in the backend, so there are three lists here. One is the emission category, another is the configuration list, based on which these process steps will be created. And this will be created again via automated flow. Based once this process steps gets created in an automated fashion, the folders and subfolders gets created. So I have a document library again in the SharePoint background where I have just created static folder called measurements. Within that, the dynamic folder will get created. Now, this folders and subfolders has a specific nomenclature or naming convention, which I have created just in the Power Automate flow. So for example, main folder, it should have the nomenclature, for example, ID hyphen cylinder series, application segment name, and so on. And then the subfolders and the subfolders. So this level of nesting of subfolders, which I'm going to show you today using the Power Automate flow. So if you see in the process step configuration, the configuration list has some important columns. For example, step number, then we have a step title, then sub-step number and sub-step title. So based on these column values, these folders with the nomenclature called step underscore step title and the subfolder, which is sub-step underscore sub-step title underscore accountable role. So all these are the columns which are there at the backend. So this is the problem statement which I'm going to showcase today. And there are multiple SharePoint lists which are involved, as I said, to create this hierarchy or the nesting of the folder, subfolder, and subfolder. So first of all, we will start with the emission measurement list. This is the primary list where the user will create an item. And these are the three key columns which will be taken into consideration, which this process step configuration list will read. So based on the location, based on the category, and based on the legislation values, the process step configuration will read, and this process step configuration will decide like how the process steps needs to be created and how the folders needs to be created. So these two are the source list, I will say, or the source list where the actual decision is used to taken. And in the output, what will happen? The process steps will get created based on that decision of the columns, that is legislation, emission category, and the location. And accordingly, the folder structure, I mean the folder, subfolder, and subfolder will get created. So this is the scenario which I'm going to demonstrate now. Let's see this in action. So I will directly navigate to one of the primary list, which is the main list. So emission measurement is the one list where I'm going to create an item very quickly. So I'll just click on add new item. I'll just give a title, let's say community demo, and I will select just the primary fields which are required. So emission, let's say application genset, series 6000, 4000, just these are some master values. Location I'm selecting here as India, cylinder value, and link main folder, certification lead, app segment is a very important field for me, so I'm just selecting it. Legislation, BSO underscore one, test bench, I'm just selecting some random values here. And then this is one of the important field, which is category in my case. So I'll just select all and so on. So accountable role, I'll just select one accountable role as well. Let's say certification engineer, and just I will click on save. So that is how this item has been created. If you see here, this item is created, which is community demo with the ID 8. Now, what will happen? The flow will trigger at the backend, and it is going to create the process steps and the folder structure. So I'm going to navigate you to the Power Automate flow, which I created. Meanwhile, the flow is also running at the backend. So how I've implemented it, this is a normal trigger, SharePoint trigger when an item is created. Some variables I have created initially. And as I always say, when I work in Power Automate, I always work like these variables. Why? Because the workflow ID and getting the run ID and getting the environment name and then composing your flow run URL. So this is a very important information that whenever you face any issues, if you create this, your run instance within the Power Automate workflow, you will be able to troubleshoot the issue if in case any error comes. So these are some of the important variables which in my all Power Automate flows, basically I create. It has nothing to do with this demo, although just to let you know. But two important variables, some array type variables which I've created just to have concurrence that where the process steps are getting created and I'm putting it in an array because there are multiple folders and subfolders which needs to be created. So I'm just taking two array variables here. Now directly jumping to my try block or try scope here. First, I'm setting the folder name because I will have a primary folder. So just to take you back to my PPT, as we talked in the PPT, there will be always a main folder. So with the some naming convention, right? So I'm just setting that particular naming convention here. So format number, let's say formatted ID, I'm just doing here. Why I'm formatting this application segment name? Because my application segment name can have slash, can have ampersand. So I'm just replacing it here. And finally, I'm just setting the folder name. I'm concatenating all these values using the wonderful Power Automate expressions. So in this just scenario, set folder name, I have just setted the folder name. Now the beauty of this here is that now it start creating the folder. So for that we have a SharePoint action, create new folder. As I said, in my document library, there is a static folder measurements. I will navigate you there first of all. So if I go to my document library, I already have a measurement folder. Within it, I want to create the folders and the subfolders, right? So that's why if you see this is the path, folder path, which I'm giving within my SharePoint online site where I want to create the folder. Now, what is happens is get relevant process steps. Now, what happens is, as I said, if I go to the PPT, it will check in the process step configuration which relevant process steps needs to be created based on three values, which is measurement category, legislation, and location. So what this Power Automate flow is doing, that it is going to get the items, relevant items, because I have a filter query here. Now, what this filter query says, the measurement category, it just check the measurement category, which is equivalent to what user has inputted in the input form, check the location and check the legislation. Based on this, the process step values or the process step configuration will be taken from here, and accordingly in the measurement process step list, those process steps will be created, right? So that's the step here or the action here. Now I'm just going through a loop here, apply to each to create the subfolders. Now, this is very important how I'm creating the subfolders and subfolder hierarchy based on this nomenclature or the conditional logic. Now, what I'm checking here is first you create the subfolder, first you create the folder, which is the create new folder. Now, if you see here in the measurements inside the main folder, create first the subfolder, which is this in my case, which is step underscore step title. So this is the first subfolder which will get created. And accordingly, the array variable will be appended that this subfolder has been created. And then the check, it is checking for the subfolder, which is this in my case, which is the subfolder where the subtitle underscore, let's say accountable role, which is substep underscore substep title underscore accountable role. So this kind of hierarchy needs to be created. And then I am also appending it within a variable, right? So that is how this will, this particular actions will executed based on the configuration. So this was the first list, which I showed you basically where we created the first item, which is community demo. This is the process step configuration list where all the process steps are configured, let's say by the business user or the admin in advance. And based on this, in this measurement process step, if I just refresh it, so based on my ID, if you see, we created this ID 8, the community demo. And based on this, you see the process steps, the measurement process steps are created. So if I just filter it based on the ID only, which we created, and then you see it has just created, if I just scroll down, for example, 15 items are created. Now, since 15 items are created, so we have reached till here. So measurement process steps are created. And accordingly, now the folder also needs to be created. So let's go into the document library. So I just refresh the document library. And I see here that this particular subfolder is created. It means our workflow has executed very well. The workflow has been executed completely. Maybe I can check the run history as well, just to showcase you. that how the workflow has been executed. So you see here just now 4 minutes ago, the status is succeeded and all the folders and subfolders are created, right? So if I go to this documents, this is the primary folder, main folder, as I showed you with the nomenclature, ID, cylinder number, series, and application segment name. So you see here ID, this is my basically the cylinder, the series is 4000, and A60 is the application segment name. So we'll go inside this, we'll see the subfolders. Now, the beauty here is all the subfolders are created. And since we created the process steps as 15 items, I showed you the 15 items got created, which means inside each subfolder, there will be some particular folder and the count will be total 15. So if I go inside each of the subfolder, for example, somewhere one subfolder gets created, somewhere three. The idea here is that the number of process steps which are there, which I showed you, is total 15. So ideally, the total 15 subfolder needs to be created within this based on the custom logic. So that's all in this video. I just wanted to showcase that how means dynamically you can create the folder and subfolder hierarchy. Over to you, David.